Hey guys, Stu Darling from Unstoppable Force. Welcome to the podcast. Do you know what? I believe we can all break out of mediocrity. We can all reach beyond what we thought our limits were. And that's what we talk about on the podcast. We talk about being unreasonable. We talk about raising our standards. And we talk about delivering the ultimate sacrifice again and again. Enjoy.
Well, it was about time. In this episode, I'm talking to me. I know, and it's not because I couldn't find a guest, but I decided it's time to actually hear from me, understand what I believe being unreasonable is. Most people say, oh yeah, you need to ask my wife or my kids the last time I was unreasonable. The world has caused that. We should all be unreasonable every single day. It's what makes us unstoppable. Enjoy me.
Welcome to this episode. I thought it was time that I actually spoke up a little bit about being unstoppable, but specifically in this episode, I want to talk about being unreasonable. When I was a wee boy, you probably can't tell, but I was brought up just outside Glasgow. And when I was a wee boy, if you supported Glasgow Celtic, then half the city wanted to kick your head in. If you supported Glasgow Rangers, then the other half of the city wanted to kick your head in. Being really smart, you might turn around and say, I support Aberdeen, at which point everyone kicked your head in. Now, I had no interest in football. None at all. In fact, I didn't really have any interest in sport. My heroes were the adventurers. You know, the astronauts, the men that walked on the moon. Sir Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing, who summited Everest. They were the folks they were my heroes. They were my role models because they did something unreasonable. They took on a challenge that was completely bonkers and went and did it anyway. Back in 1962, the then President of the United States in America, JFK, said at an address, said, within this decade, I'm going to paraphrase this, within this decade, we're going to put a man on the moon and we're going to bring him safely back to Earth. Most of the world just went, really? Do what? Over the next decade, over 400,000 people were involved in that mission to put a man on the moon and safely return him to Earth. Now, just take a moment to think about how unreasonable that statement was. At the time, you just think about what was going on back then. Your flight had only existed for a few decades. And now we're talking about putting man on the moon. When Hillary got to Everest, there had been years, decades of attempts to put man on the highest place on planet Earth. And then he and Tenzing just went and did it. They were completely unreasonable. We were born to be completely unreasonable. You know, that first race you ever entered, you were fucking unreasonable. You had to be. If you weren't unreasonable, another sperm would have reached the egg and you wouldn't exist. We were unreasonable. And then throughout our lives, we've been told to be reasonable. Play nice. Go to school on your 5th birthday. Eat these things, don't eat these things. Eat 3 meals a day. We call them breakfast, lunch and dinner. We've started to conform. Don't get me wrong, conforming is a good thing. It's why we drive on the same side of the road as one another and we don't have too many car crashes. Conforming is important, but there comes a point that conforming stops us being our true animal selves. We got to get unreasonable again. And if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, oh, you've got to ask my wife the last time I was unreasonable. I was probably unreasonable with my kids. Not that sort of unreasonable. Yeah, look, we can all be assholes. We can all be dicks. But actually, the unreasonable I'm talking about is living beyond ourselves. Going out there and saying, I'm going to do it this way. For the betterment of me, for the betterment of my family, the betterment of my community, the better of my global community. We've got to start getting unreasonable again. But we've stopped being unreasonable because we're scared. We are frightened of being unreasonable. Because if we're unreasonable, then, people might not like me. What people? What people might not like you if you're not unreasonable? Go and be a little bit unreasonable. You don't have to be hugely unreasonable. You don't have to tell them you're going to, like Musk, we're going to put man on Mars. Be a little bit unreasonable. It's why I'm not a great fan of your comfort zone and stepping out of your comfort zone, because that says you've got to leave something behind. You've got to leave that comfort zone behind. And we like our comfort zone. Our ego tells us, look, I like to stay warm. I like to have the food. I like to have the water. I like this. I'm just going to protect you. That's comfort. We weren't meant to be comfortable. So let's change it up. Let's step into the zone of the unknown. Now, how fucking exciting does that sound? Stepping into the zone of the unknown, leaving, let's not use the word comfort, but just leaving that space behind and going, I'm going on an adventure. We're all going on a bear hunt. Oh, how exciting does that? That was one of my kids' favourite books. We're all going on a bear hunt. Now that sounds exciting, doesn't it? It's a fucking stupid thing to do, going hunting for bears. But it's exciting. It's stepping into the zone of the unknown. And that step can be tiny. It can be a tiny tiptoe. Because then if we're not sure, we can step back. And then we can take a tiptoe in a slightly different direction and go, oh, that felt all right. How brave am I? I'm being a little bit unreasonable in a space I'm comfortable with. And then as we get more comfortable with the discomfort, we can step further into our zone of the unknown. We take bigger leaps. We take bigger bounds into that zone of the unknown. And we create an unreasonable muscle. We create a neural pathway in there that says, do you know what? Being unreasonable is all right. There's nothing wrong with being unreasonable, and I'm comfortable with being unreasonable. Look at Musk. How unreasonable is he? And he doesn't stop. Look at Steve Jobs. Unreasonable. Changing things up. But look at them both for the good of humanity. It's that bigger picture of being unreasonable. It's not being unkind. Let's not get the two mixed up. Being unreasonable is all about growth for more than just me. So let's actually take back that word. Too often, society, the media, changes the definition of words to frighten us. Being a predator, we're told, is a bad thing. Predatory behavior is a bad thing. Now, there are really, really bad examples. There are examples of people who use predatory behavior from a power perspective to frighten other people, to harm other people. But take a look in the mirror. You're a predator. If you weren't a predator, you wouldn't be able to look in the mirror because your eyes would be looking that way. You'd be going, am I a predator? No, you're not. If you can look in a mirror, you're a predator. Your eyes are on the front. We are hunters. We are predators. But the media, society has shifted that word and said, oh, you can't be like that. One of the greatest predators on this little planet is a wolf. A wolf is a predator. But look at the way a wolf protects the pack. They put the younger ones up front. They put the older ones in the middle. Where's the leader of the pack? The leader of the pack is right down the back so he can see everything that's going on. They can watch what's going on. They can direct activity. That is a predator. How proud would you be to be described as that sort of predator? So society shifted words, and they've done the same with unreasonable. They've shifted unreasonable to be something that we should not do. It's incorrect. I tell you now, it is incorrect. We've got to bring it back. Because what happens is when we don't use the word unreasonable and we say unreasonable people are in the margins, we give the margins a voice. That's what we're seeing. Look at what happened in the grounds of New Zealand Parliament. Look at what happened on the 6th of January in the Capitol building in the United States. We gave power to the unreasonable. And we were a little bit frightened of it. And it meant that right-wing fundamentalists and left-wing fundamentalists, and look, there's nothing wrong with fundamentalists. Some of the greatest advances have been made by fundamentalist thinking. But when it all goes awry and it's done through unkindness and violence, well, maybe we've taken a step too far. And that's what we saw on both these occasions. We see it elsewhere every day. But we look at it and say, I actually agree with some of that. Or I agree with some of that. But I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to be labelled a crazy. I don't want to be labelled a fundamentalist. So we sit in our little middle, we sit in the centre, and we say nothing. We sit quietly. Those of us who actually have the capacity for calm thought and analysis and think things through based on first principles and experience and knowledge, we sit there quietly and we let the right wing, the left wing fill the noise. They fill that echo chamber. And we sit here frightened to be unreasonable. We see every day. Hopefully you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm going to go out and be a little bit more unreasonable then. Yeah, we all should. What right do I have to be ranting at you? And it probably does sound a little bit like a rant. What right do I have to decide to start an Unstoppable Force TV show and podcast? And it's unreasonable. I'm just a wee boy who got his head kicked in Scotland for not liking football. But I decided, actually, my path was different. Your path is different. All we're doing is conforming. We're saying that I will fit in. I'll just fit in. I'll stay quiet. I'm just do what I'm told. I'll fit in. How comfortable do you feel? How comfortable do you feel just fitting in? I know most of the time it works and it's fine and, oh yeah, it's all right. But every now and again, you'll maybe waken up or you'll take yourself back into nature and you'll begin to feel that discomfort of realizing that you are fitting in. You are changing who you are in order to be acceptable to another group. Now, how does that sound? You are changing your own uniqueness, the uniqueness that you were in the moment that mum and dad got together for that couple of seconds. They created a unique human being in that moment. And you're now going, no, I just fit in. I do the same as everyone else. Easy life. Well, it might be an easy life, but how fulfilled does it feel? We've got to find where we belong. We've got to find where it's okay to be unreasonable. That's the purpose of Unstoppable Force. It's to bring people together to say, look, let's get out there and be an unstoppable force. Let's get out there and be unreasonable. And of course, the other two steps, let's raise our standards and let's determine the sacrifice that we are willing to give to do it. Now, to be unreasonable, you may sacrifice friends. I don't actually mean sort of, sacrifice friends, but you may give up friendships. That's probably a better way of putting it. You may give up friendships. Friendships may drift because you've grown. You've moved. You've grown out, up, along. You've changed, and those other folks have chosen that, not my way. And if we continue to do that, we find the place where we actually belong in this world. And when we belong, we can do whatever we want. I remember I was talking to my son. He's 23, and we were walking down the street, and he's a chef, and is aspiring to do amazing things in the kitchen. And he said to me, "This is going to be lonely, Dad, because I'm trying to take my cooking career, I'm trying to take chefing in a direction that maybe doesn't fit in with an awful lot of people." The sad thing was I had to say, do you know what? You're right. This can be a lonely journey. It doesn't mean you're alone, but it can be a lonely journey as you figure out where you belong. But that is the sacrifice. That is the sacrifice that we must give in order to raise our standard, to become unreasonable. You see the way this whole thing joins up? It's beautiful. We become unstoppable by those same 3 steps. So you get comfortable with that discomfort of being lonely as you take this journey, because the gift at the end of it is a bunch of folks out there who are just desperate to be unreasonable. They're desperate to start shifting things. I have conversations every day with people going, are you giving me permission to be unreasonable? No, I'm not giving you fucking permission to be unreasonable. Give yourself permission to be unreasonable, but I will walk with you. I will walk with you on that path to being unreasonable, because that is where the gifts lie. That is how we move society from beyond what we see at the moment. This place where we're all conforming because we're not sure what's going on. That's where we've got to take it, and we become unreasonable together. And wow, that's a movement that I would love to be a part of. Unreasonably taking things forward, asking the difficult questions, seeking the answers to those challenging questions. All of that's unreasonable, and we all get to do it. We all get to play in that space. Back in the early 80s, I got bullied horribly at school. My dad died when I was 10 years old, and I was then different, even more different than that kid that didn't like football. And I got bullied mercilessly throughout school. And I used to seek ways out of that bullying, going and doing different things. I wasn't willing to fit in. And an astronaut, 2 astronauts in fact, were coming to our village. A chap called Bob Pogue and Bill Irwin. Robert Pogue, was an astronaut on Skylab, the first man-made, or the US satellite space station that circuited the globe. Jim Irwin was the lunar module commander on Apollo 15. He actually drove the lunar buggy. They were coming to my village. Now, I was brought up in a tiny little village of less than 3,000 people in Scotland, just outside Glasgow. They were coming to visit our village. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go and meet them. And everyone said, don't be daft. Why the hell would 2 astronauts want to meet a school kid? Fair point. Yeah, they were over to spread their message, and why would they want to spend time with a wee boy? Well, I thought, I'm going to let them make that decision. I'm going to let them decide if they want to spend some time with me. And this was at a time where the first flights of the space shuttle had just taken place. You were into the next stage of human exploration of space. And I wrote a letter to the mayor of the town that near where we lived. And I was only one of 2 school kids who wrote a letter to the mayor saying, hey, I'm really interested in space, stars and the moon and stuff like that. I'd love to meet an astronaut. And we both got invited to afternoon tea with 2 astronauts. How cool is that? I got to sit and share or have a cup of tea and cakes with a man who spent months in space and another man who actually walked on the moon. In my study at home, I've still got their signed photographs. They sit there as two of the people that were my role models. As I said, I'd look at that picture and go, I met them, but only because I did what everyone said I shouldn't do. Everyone said no one wants to talk. An astronaut wouldn't be interested in talking to you. The mayor wouldn't even read your letter. But I thought, well, I'm going to be unreasonable. I'm going to see what happens. So I wrote the letter and I got the letter back. And not only was I invited to afternoon tea with 2 astronauts, they signed the photographs of images of them on the moon. I was then invited to the public event that they were doing to hear more of their stories, all because I was unreasonable. That's the gift that we get when we are unreasonable. The world opens up to us. God, the universe, whatever you choose as a greater being, they look at it and go, I'm going to meet you. You did something unreasonable. I'm going to meet you. And life begins to flow in a completely different direction. That is the gift of being unreasonable. Go out and try it. What have you got to lose? Remember, tiptoeing into the zone of the unknown, just to check if it's all right. You're just like dipping your toe in the sea to see if it's too cold to actually go for a swim in the middle of winter, the way that Lizzie does. Nutter. That stepping stone into the zone of the unknown, that tiptoe into the zone of the unknown, is your introduction to being unreasonable. And remember, it only takes 30 days to create a new neural pathway. So go out there. Here's the permission. Go out there and be fucking unreasonable for the next 30 days. It'll become natural. And who knows where your life will go when you are comfortable in your discomfort. Who knows where life will go when you decide, when you choose to become unreasonable. Do you know where you go? You go into this place called unstoppable. You become an unstoppable force. Hope you enjoyed it. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, but more importantly, I hope you got something from it. As I say to clients at our workshops, if you take one phrase from one sentence that was uttered during that podcast, then this has been of value. If you're looking for more content, jump across to www.unstoppableforce.co.nz or find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. If you enjoyed this and you want more, we are live across New Zealand at events and workshops and sometimes in the US. If this has been valuable to become an unstoppable force, come along and reach beyond your limits.